Hi, Jeff Spira here. This is about the Nautical Voyages series that I'm doing and intend to do more of, both as videos and as podcasts. I've always been fascinated with nautical history. Back in my college days, I dove on a couple of shipwrecks. There were two abalone divers on the same dock as I had my commercial fishing boat. They were called the Porters. Ernie was the father and the son was Carson. Ernie was featured on the old Jacques Cousteau TV show about the re-expansion of the sea otters. You know, the otters had been hunted for fur, and so they kind of became rare in Central California. I think they were pretty much restricted to British Columbia and maybe the Puget Sound area. I'm not sure. But they ended the hunting of them and allowed them to recover, and which eventually they expanded back into the Central Coast and really killed the abalone diving business, which was really a staple of Morro Bay fisheries from about 1900 until the 1970s. So, commercially viable quantities of abalone for food really crashed when the sea otters returned, and most of the fishermen switched to harvesting sea urchins. At one time it was considered a pest, and in fact they'd hired divers to go out with ball-peen hammers and kill them because they destroyed the kelp beds. But about that time, mid to late 70s, the Japanese discovered that California had lots of sea urchins, and the market for urchins for sushi bars in Japan and the explosion of sushi in the U.S. Resulted in a big market for the urchins. So divers would go out and catch them instead of just killing them, because there were really no use for them before that. So, and they grew just tremendously in the kelp beds. So for a while, when the abalone diving went down, and a lot of the divers were looking for other things to do. So Ernie and his son Carson started salvaging ships and boats and things like that. While I was there, they raised an 80-foot steel tugboat that had sunk near the entrance of Morro Bay, and overhauled it and resold it. It was a huge, big boat, and they raised a schooner keel it was all lead, and sold it for scrap metal and a few other things. It was fascinating stuff. But Carson invited me to go along a couple times, and I did, and it was interesting to see some of these sunken ships. After that, I graduated with my mechanical engineering degree, and my first job was to design and build shiplift systems. One of my projects was the world's largest shiplift platform. It was built in Batangas Bay in the Philippines. It was a big platform. It would lift 700-foot long ships. And I did a lot of other hydraulics for shipyards and shipping, that appeared on ships, and offshore drilling rigs and things like that. Until I got laid off and I ended up going into the aerospace world. So, a few years back, there was a book that came out, and it was written by a Royal submarine captain by the name of Gavin Mendez. And it was about an explorer named Zheng He, who was Chinese. And Gavin said that he had circumnavigated the world. It's called 1421, the year China discovered America. And this was the early days of the internet. I think it was at least 15 or 18 years ago. And so I joined his group, having some knowledge about different things in ship design and shipbuilding and stuff like that. And he was looking for information about marine railways, as he thought the Bimini Road may have been a structure built by Zheng He to maintain his junks. You know, they were big ships. I mean, they were 400 feet long. They were way in, you know, 4 times the length of Columbus's ships, and that would have been 32 times the displacement. So they were good sized ships. So I did a little research and looked at it, and you know, I didn't really think that the Bimini Road. I mean, I think the Bimini Road is pretty much natural. It's not really a man-made object, but anyway, it you know, I did a little. There may be some truth to his thought about that, but I think it would be quite a bit older than you know, he imagined Zheng He may have done it. So anyway, I ended up doing a lot of research about it, about these voyages and stuff like that. And you know, I'm familiar with a lot of the documentation, and it was pretty well documented that Zheng He got to Africa. But to think he crossed the Atlantic and around the Horn into the Pacific is kind of weak, I think. But I did discover a number of other voyages, including from China, that could have accounted for some of the Chinese-based evidence that Mendez cited. So I have a lot of evidence for 2 Chinese expeditions and a number more based on my research, and I'll be making some videos and podcasts about them in the future. Here, I've got them all set up. So I had actually gotten a book approved by a publisher to write for them, which I had about half written. It was called you know, Voyages to America Before Columbus, something like that. But I never really completed the manuscript, and I had some business things get in the way. It took me away from you know, doing the research and writing, and I also you know, the book business kind of changed back then, and so you know, that contract kind of fell apart. So anyway, there's a lot of really interesting voyage speculations that have been made by people, many with lots of hard evidence and some with not very much evidence, but a trail maybe. And most of these I'll be presenting what some others have put together. You know, I'm not saying that these actually happened. I'm not professing to know whether they actually occurred. Just that they're possible, and here's what might suggest that they did. Now, some of them I think the evidence is extremely strong, and some of it is not so strong. So, you know, I'll be mentioning that in the videos and podcasts that I talk about. You know, I didn't look at these as a serious archaeologist, you know, but I'm, you know, a sailor that's written and taught seamanship and coastal navigation and celestial navigation, and I've designed and sailed boats, you know, both coastally and offshore. So I'm aware of what boats and ships are capable of and how they perform in the ocean and that sort of thing. So, you know, I'd intended to concentrate on the nautical aspects of these voyages, but you know, there are a lot of other topics came in, like, you know, parasites and language evidence and art, pottery, even cultural things, you know, presented themselves. And I couldn't really avoid looking at them. I mean, I'm an engineer, so I studied a lot of science, and, you know, kind of examining these with my scientific eye was kind of part of my research. So that's why I'll mention many of these kind of evidences. I also wrote a book about shipwrecks. Some of you have seen it. If you bought a set of printed plans from me recently, I probably tucked one in there. I've got a few left. They don't sell commercially very well, so I've got a few boxes left, and I've been sending them out to various people. These are shipwrecks and artificial reefs of Southern California. So. Anyway, I'm going to talk about some of these wreck information that I come across in these voyages as well. You know, there was a Roman ship found in Texas, you know, and a fleet of ships that sank off the shore of the coast of Japan in a storm, you know. You know, and even some, like my video and podcast about the USS Buchanan, were intentionally sunk. So there's some other fascinating stories about ships that were sunk. There's a destroyer not too far from where I live. I can probably see the spot on the water from my bedroom. It's about 8 miles offshore in Southern California. That is a fascinating story from the 1920s or 30s, I think. So anyway, I hope you enjoy these stories. I'm not doing this to promote my business. So, my other YouTube and podcast channel about boat building are kind of done to encourage you to build a boat. These are just done out of my own interest, though, and I, thought you'd enjoy hearing these stories and giving some thought to the people that ventured out of sight of land to explore and search what was out there. So please post or send me your ideas about these podcasts. I'd love to hear feedback from you about what you'd like, what you liked and what you didn't, and what you'd like to hear in the future, and what you might hope to learn about them. So anyway, so this is the first of the series of podcasts on voyages that I intend to carry on into the future. And I've already put some of these up as YouTube videos, but this is kind of the intro to those YouTube videos as well. So I hope you enjoy them, and thank you for watching and or listening. And we'll talk to you again very soon.